Hello everyone, it's Mark. I am the Sanderson collector, and it is Fanderson week where I talk about any kind of general fanish Sanderson stuff that I want to. And this week I'm going to be talking about Brandon's awesome new Magic the Gathering story, which came out last month and is available for free. Now, the biggest question I know that most of y'all have about the story is whether or not you need to know anything about the game, Magic the Gathering, in order to read Brandon's Magic story, and the answer is no. Absolutely, you do not need to know anything about the game to enjoy the story. It stands on its own, and it is really good. I have talked to several other fans who have read it and enjoyed it, who have not played Magic ever, and they said that, they didn't feel like they missed out on anything. With that being said, I'm going to give y'all an introduction to the game, Magic the Gathering, talk a little bit about, what it is, and talk a little bit about the story as well. So, as I mentioned before, Magic the Gathering is a card game. It is commonly abbreviated M:TG, and you play with pre-constructed decks, usually 60 cards, sometimes 100, sometimes, 250 if you're crazy, and you play one-on-one usually, with your deck against an opponent's deck. You'll both start at 20 life. Your objective is to get your opponent down to 0 life, and you do that by playing creatures, casting spells, and playing other items that go onto the field called permanents that have effects on the game. Some of them give you mana that you can cast more spells with. Some of them deal damage to your opponent. Some of them make your creatures better. Some of them make your opponent's creatures worse. Some of them kill creatures, and so on. And if you want to build a constructed deck, warning, some of the card prices can get a little bit crazy. There are cards that the single card is worth more than a couple $1,000s, and I have a deck of cards for the modern format, which is a format with all the cards since the 8th edition. The deck, called Lantern Control, yes, I'm that kind of person, is probably worth about $1,000 just for a stack of 75 cards. It's 60 cards that I play in the main deck, plus 25 cards in the sideboard, and my sideboard is cards that I swap in against specific opponents when I know what they're playing after we have played our first game. Now, for those who don't want to spend $1,000 building a deck, or who want to level the playing field, or who want a different kind of skill challenge, or just want a different experience, there's another format called Draft, and in Draft, what happens is each player sitting around a table, usually 8, opens a booster pack of cards, which has 14 or so cards in it, looks through the cards, selects, oh, I want this card, places the cards face down in front of them, and passes the remainder of the pack of cards to the person to their left, and then receives a pack of cards from the person to their right, which is missing one card that person took. They look through, they pick one card, and they place it in front of them, and pass it on, and so on. The second pack, once they've gone through all the cards in the first pack, they open, take one card, pass it to the right, third pack goes back to the left. You're left with about 42 cards, and you take those, remove the ones that you don't want to play, add some lands. Lands are the cards that produce the mana that allow you to cast your spells, and you build a deck just out of those cards that you just drafted and play against the other people that were drafting with you as well. So that levels the playing field because no one gets to spend $1,000 and bring in a really good pre-constructed deck and beat up your $20 deck. Everyone starts off the same field, and it's much more about the skill of knowing which cards are good, how the cards go together, how to build the decks, and so on. And it's an absolute blast to play. Draft is probably my favorite format. Draft is also one of Brandon's favorite formats. Brandon will play drafts at some of the conventions he goes to, the ones where he's there the entire weekend and has extra time. I've gotten to play against him at 2 separate conventions now. I even managed to beat him at one of them. It was so awesome. And for people who want a specific draft experience, instead of just opening up packs from the sets that they put out for Magic the Gathering, you can make your own pre-constructed set of cards, shuffle them up, and make booster packs out of those, and then you just get all those cards back at the end of the draft, and that set of cards that you assemble to draft with for you and your friends is called a cube. Cube is Brandon's favorite format of Magic the Gathering. He has mini cubes of his own that he has collected and assembled and been given, and they're an absolute blast to play with. I got to play with his power cube once, and it was one of the coolest experiences ever. I did not manage to beat him at that one, but it was still an absolute blast and a ton of fun. So that's a little bit about how you play Magic the Gathering. I'd also like to talk a bit about the lore of Magic and the story behind it, because it is set in a pseudo-fantasy universe with its own story throughout and overarching, and Brandon's story that he wrote is within the continuity, within the canon of that universe. Now, within this universe, there are several basically planets of existence that are called planes, Planes, and there are special people with magical abilities to travel between the planes called planeswalkers. Planeswalkers are basically the equivalent of world hoppers in the Cosmere. They travel around, do whatever they want, are more powerful than most of the other people. And the main Magic the Gathering stories for recent years have been following a group of planeswalkers called the Gatewatch. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the Gatewatch because you don't really need to know anything about them. They do not play into Brandon's story basically at all. Brandon's story picks a new planeswalker, Davriel Kane, who is on a plane called Innistrad and looks in at his life. So Brandon got to basically create a new character, a new planeswalker for his story, and write the story about him. And that means that you don't need to know anything about the other planeswalkers or anything else in order to get into the story and enjoy the characters. The way Magic the Gathering does their story is they publish stories online, and they have started doing novels again as well. Brandon has not written one of those. Fingers crossed that he does someday, because that would be super cool. He only has written his one novella so far. And along with these stories, they release a new set of cards which come together in booster packs for drafting and things like that every 3 months. And these sets are always, for each set, on a single plane in a single location, telling one part of the story. Sometimes there will be multiple sets on the same plane in a row before moving to the next plane. Sometimes they'll just hop around whenever they want to. And every card in Magic the Gathering has its own art. The art for Magic is absolutely amazing. Even if you never want to play the game, I highly recommend going and looking up some of the art. If you're a writer, it can be really cool, inspirational art for a fantasy world. If you're not, it's still really awesome to look at, because they get top-notch artists to do all of these cards, and they come out with so many cards. It's just absolutely amazing. Now, there are a couple of artists from Magic the Gathering who also work with Brandon and are his friends. The first is Steve Argyle. Steve has done art for many iconic Magic the Gathering cards like Bloodbraid Elf and Deathrite Shaman and Liliana of the Veil. If you don't know much about Magic, that means nothing to you. If you do know Magic, you probably know what those cards are. And for Brandon, Steve has done some really awesome art of Vin. You can find it in the end papers of the Mistborn Leatherbound. He did this art, and he did the art in the back as well of the Assassin and the Warrior of Vin, which are really, really awesome. He sells prints of these. I have Magic the Gathering playmats to put my cards on when I'm playing of this art signed by Steve, which are really cool. He sells these amazing metal engravings of the art that I really want to get that are really cool. Another Magic artist who does art for Brandon is Randy Vargas, and he did the art of Vin with Tensoon in the Well of Ascension Leatherbound edition, which is honestly my favorite art in the entire edition. I absolutely love the image and the feel of Vin there with Tensoon. It is absolutely amazing. I wish that I had had the money when that piece of art went up for sale last year, because I absolutely would have gotten it. And he does Magic card art as well and has done some cool cards. And the last artist that you might recognize is Howard Lyon. Howard did the covers for the Snapshot and Dreamer double, so he did the front and other front covers, and they're really cool. Howard Lyons also did the back end paper art for Oathbringer. He painted the heralds and did an absolutely amazing job. I have also seen the original paintings of these, and they are absolutely stunning. I am so glad that Brandon was able to get him to do these. I really like them, and I hope that he continues to do art for Brandon in the future. And he has done some Magic cards as well, the most well-known of which is probably Cathartic Reunion, which is used in modern decks such as Dredge. Cool fact about this card, which I have a copy of right here, is that the two people in the background, right over here, are actually Brandon's assistant Isaac and his son. For those who don't know, Isaac is the person who does all of the maps for Brandon's work and his personal art director. So it's really cool that he got to be on a card as well. And some other cool cards that I'd like to highlight. There is a card called Fourth Bridge Prowler that came out about 2 years ago. I don't think we have any official confirmation that this is based on Bridge 4, but as far as I know, it is, and Brandon has indicated that he thinks it is as well, so that's super cool. I've got a stack of these. And then the third card I want to talk about is called Urbis Protector. I do not have a copy of that one. I need to go order some. And Urbis Protector has art from Steve Argyle, one of the artists I mentioned earlier, featuring your favorite author. That's right, Brandon is featured on a Magic the Gathering card. Mark from the future here, and I have realized while editing this video that it is getting quite long. Also, it is getting kind of late. I kind of ran a race this morning and then spent half the afternoon napping. So I'm sorry this video is going up so late. Because it is so long, I'm going to split it right here. The second half will go up tomorrow night, and it talks about Brandon's actual story, Children of the Nameless, and the plane that it is set on. But for today, this is everything, so I'll see y'all again tomorrow.